The world has been thrust into chaos and uncertainty. Millions of Christians disappeared. Apparitions of the Virgin Mary have reappeared. Meanwhile, the Antichrist begins his charismatic career. The apocalypse has finally arrived. Take an end-time journey with an American and Israeli family as they experience the ancient biblical predictions as they roll off their parchments and pound onto the pavement, packing a powerful global punch. Will the Thompsons survive this perilous apocalyptic period? Hello, I'm your host, Dave Hart, and I'm here with best-selling author and speaker Bill Salus to discuss his new novel called The Apocalypse Revelations. It's been nearly 2 decades since Tim LaHaye published his best-selling book called Left Behind. But new revelations into the apocalypse have surfaced. What are they? When will they happen? How will they affect you and your loved ones? These and many more questions are answered in the new novel by Bill Salus entitled The Apocalypse Revelations. It's one thing to talk about end times Bible prophecies, but it's another thing to act them out, and that's exactly what the Apocalypse Revelations does. Experience the end times through the eyes of the Thompson family and discover how their gripping story uncovers the silver lining of hope against the backdrop of global gloom and doom. Their family tale could soon become your reality. Bill, what are some of the new revelations into the apocalypse?
Oh, hey, Dave, it's great to be back on the program again, and I'm so excited about this new book. And there are some new revelations into the apocalypse that are very powerful, globally impacting. You know, we've got the book will discuss what happens with the destruction of Damascus in Isaiah 17. It says it'll be a ruinous heap. It'll no longer be a city. How will that affect the world and the Thompson family? Then there's this nuclear disaster in Iran and an ancient prophecy of Elam that's been vastly overlooked in Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 34 through 39. Those things play hand in hand in the novel. And then the Israeli Defense Forces rise to become an exceedingly great power. And predictions in Ezekiel 37:10 and Obadiah 1:18 and elsewhere. How's that going to affect the world? How's that going to affect the Middle East? And ultimately, we get into the Psalm 83 war, the final Arab-Israeli conflict. And the Thompson family are glued to their seats as they're watching this, like we all used to when Desert Storm was going on and America was firing sorties into Iraq when Saddam Hussein was the brutal dictator then. And then what about the rapture of the church? Boy, I'll tell you, Dave, that chapter in the novel, the readers are going to have a box of Kleenex next to them because it is a tear-jerking chapter. And then we get into this coming greater, safer Israel, the Israel described in Ezekiel 38, verses 8 through 13, that's dwelling securely without walls, bars, nor gates. How does that come into being after the final Arab-Israeli conflict, around the time of the rapture? You know, what comes first? You know, so I try to lay these things out in a sequential order. And then happens the Russian, Turkish, Iranian invasion, the Magog invasion of Ezekiel 38. How powerful that event is played out in this novel. What about the future of America amidst the backdrop of all this? We can't forget this is one of these families we're dealing with here is an American family. Will there be future terrorism? And in the novel, I put forward a powerful sequence of events that are dealing with terrorism again in America, and how will these Americans respond to that? And then there's, of course, we know after the rapture, there's this unrestrained satanic supernatural deception when Satan is no longer restrained in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 8 through 9. And he brings forward with all signs and lying wonders his lawless one, his seed, his Antichrist. How is that going to play out? How will he be introduced into the world? We act that out in this novel. And we reveal Mystery Babylon, the harlot world religion in Revelation 17. Will the Marian apparitions increase? You know, I put the scene together where we've got more Marian apparitions coming after the rapture. What about the arrival of the Antichrist?
Right.
How does he come on the scene in the first seal judgment, Revelation 6, 1 and 2? And then, lo and behold, what about those 144,000 Jewish witnesses? What's the mystery behind their names? the way they're ordered out of chronological order. Then there's the two witnesses. Who are they? Is that Moses and Elijah? I put forward two witnesses showing up in Jerusalem and their ministry, and then ultimately Satan. How does he connect with the Antichrist? How does he let the Antichrist know that he is his seed? So these are some of the new revelations into the apocalypse that, like you said, it's been over a couple of decades since the Left Behind series,
Right.
so it was time for a new novel to come out that covers some of these new discoveries.
Right. Bill, do you think it'd be all right if we just go through the table of contents, as it were, and you give us some insights as to what we can expect in those chapters?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We've got essentially, how many chapters we got here? We got
30. There's over 30 chapters.
we got 37 chapters, so we won't be able to go through all of them. But why don't we read a few excerpts out of a couple of them? Like chapter 1 says, Iran prepares for the apocalypse. So the book opens up with a powerful event where Iran gets together and holds a meeting with its proxies, Hezbollah, Syria, and Hamas. And why don't you read a couple excerpts out of that chapter? And
All right, sure. Sure. It starts out, the time has come. Islam's Messiah has readied for his return, declared the charismatic Shiite cleric Zamani Niqad. President Zakiri, we must alert the others without delay and inform them that their multi-front attack upon the little Jewish Satan is now imminent. Hezbollah's Fadlallah, I think I said that close,
Very
boasted.
good.
There is nothing to fear. Hezbollah handed Israel its head on a platter in our summer war with the Jews in 2006. With Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, and Hamas attacking Israel together, we can assuredly destroy the Zionist pigs and liberate Palestine for Hamas and our Palestinian brothers.
And that's it. This is something we're all watching real closely.
Right.
Right now, Iran is the elephant in the room, the existential threat to Israel, with control over Lebanon with the Hezbollah, controls over major swaths of Iraq and Syria. Of course, they've helped Bashar al-Assad in his revolution over there to sustain himself in the civil war. He's there to stay now, Bashar al-Assad. And of course, the Hamas now have become proxies of Iran. Down in the Gaza, and the Houthis are lobbing missiles into Saudi Arabia as another proxy of Iran.
Yeah.
This is all heading towards a climactic multi-front attack against Israel. How will that play out? So chapter 1, we get into this big meeting in Tehran with these leaders of these proxies. And so that was just a couple excerpts from that. And then the next couple chapters, we start taking it home to an American family. We've got a grandfather, George Thompson, married to Martha Thompson. Her other name in the book is called Mimi. And they're concerned their grandson, Tyler, has been birthed in the final generation. So Grandpa George is very close to Tyler, is trying to prepare him for the end times. And so chapter 2 says there's troublesome times on humanity's horizon. Chapter 3 deals with the tribulation generation. And then chapter 4, Israel comes under multi-front attack. And I'm going to have you read an excerpt on chapter 4 because it's powerful.
Great.
But what's happening in those couple chapters 2 and 3 is Grandpa George is out fishing with his grandson, and he's trying to kind of talk to him about the end times. And as they're driving home, the news breaks out on the radio that a major war is starting to happen in Israel. And so Grandpa George puts the pedal to the metal and scares his grandson Tyler half to death as he's trying to get home to get himself in front of the TV and find out what's going on and developing in the Middle East, because Grandpa George is someone who studies Bible prophecy very closely.
Oh my gosh.
Now we get into chapter 4. Israel comes under multi-front attack. And why don't you go ahead and read some excerpts out of chapter 4?
All right. We begin. Observing that his grandson has checked out of the discussion and into his preteen music world, Poppy tuned into his favorite Christian radio station and continued homeward. Shortly into the program, the radio station interrupted its broadcast, announcing, "This is Alan Smith, station manager at KWBC. We interrupt our regularly scheduled program to bring you an important news alert. We have just been informed that a barrage of rockets has rocked Tel Aviv. Reportedly, precision-guided missiles carrying chemical warheads were included in the assault. Although many missiles were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome defense system, several apparently got through, hitting Israel's capital city. Unconfirmed reports suggest that hundreds of Israelis are believed injured or dead as a result of these fatal blasts. Hysteria fills the city streets as several 100,000 tourists and local residents scramble for gas masks and nearby bomb shelters. We have Sheila Abernathy, our correspondent on the ground in Tel Aviv, with us by phone. Sheila, what can you tell us? Turning up the volume, Grandpa immediately blurted out, "Turn off your iPod, quick, Ty. We have to hear this."
So you can see the dramatic effect it has on George, who's been following this stuff in the Middle East very closely. Attacks coming in, hitting Tel Aviv, in the capital city of Jerusalem, and so he can't wait to get home and get in front of his TV set and follow what's going on, and all the events that start to mushroom out of what's going on in this war. And then it goes on in the next chapter, and we jump to what's going on in Damascus, because one of the first casualties will be the Isaiah 17 prophecy, the destruction of Damascus. It says there's panic in Damascus. Dave, go ahead and read an excerpt out of that.
Beginning her expedient evacuation from Damascus, Adara Thierry cried out to her father, "Syrian President Hassan Thierry, what have you initiated? Our country is in utter turmoil. Syria has come under serious attack from Israel." With tears streaming down her frightened face, Adara continued, "Brother Kamal has warned that we all must flee immediately because Israel is coming to destroy Damascus and our dynasty. He has already prepared a place of refuge for us in Jordan." The Syrian president replied to his daughter, "I know this situation is escalating and looks like it's spiraling out of control, but don't panic. President Zakaria of Iran has promised his country's full support to our final war with the Jews."
Exactly, and that's the thing. I mean, so all of a sudden we get a war going forth with Syria and Israel, and we've had in the last couple of years over 200 Israeli airstrikes into Syria. We know it's just a matter of time till Syria retaliates.
Right.
And that Hezbollah is going to get drawn into that, and Iran will be drawn into that. And so we have President Terreri here telling his daughter, don't panic. I know it's looking grim here, but Iran has promised its support, and that I think that will ensure a victory over Israel. So then we get into, let's talk about Iran. Chapter 6 says there's trouble in Tehran and destruction in Damascus. And go ahead and read a couple sentences out of that.
Throughout the next few days, George Thompson and his faithful companion of 44 years, Mimi, remained generally fastened to the sofa and focused upon the TV, watching Mideast matters significantly worsen. Additionally, George entertained a steady stream of phone calls from fellow prophecy buffs interested in comparing notes as to the biblical ramifications of the escalating Mideast mayhem.
Absolutely. Wow. So he's glued to the TV set. He's responding to emails because he's looked at as a credible source among many people who's taught Bible studies and things like that. And Mimi is his wife, Martha. Her name is Mimi. George is also called Poppy by his grandson Tyler and the other excerpts you read. Now, chapter 7 goes on, Israel attacks Iranian nuclear sites, and that's where we're going to get into that prophecy of Elam, Jeremiah chapter 49. The Bushehr nuclear reactor is there. It hugs the Persian Gulf, and it's a nuclear disaster waiting to happen.
Oh, my.
So it says Israel attacks Iranian nuclear sites. Go ahead and read an excerpt out of that.
Okay. What went wrong is Iranian President Muqtada Zakiri inquired of his spiritual advisor Zamani Nikhad. How could Israel use nuclear weapons against our closest allies? Were we not all, including the Syrians, under the divine protection of Allah and called to hasten the return of Messiah Muhammad al-Mahdi? Nikhad replied, "Fear not, my vision of his return was crystal clear. Mahdi is coming. We are only to know when, not necessarily how. Muqtada and his time is near." Unimpressed with his advisor's vague and cliche-like comment, Zakiri asked, "Then what am I to do? Sit around and wait for Hezbollah and Hamas to be destroyed alongside before Iran attacks Israel?" There is no word from Syrian President Hassan Thierry or his chief commanders, so I fear they all died during the blast and lie buried deep beneath the Damascus rubble.
There you go.
Wow.
Okay. How rapid will that happen? It says in Isaiah 17, verse 14, that when Damascus is destroyed, it's destroyed overnight. It is reduced to rubble. It is a ruinous heap that will never exist anymore. So, Dave, we've given the listeners sort of a taste into the first few chapters of the book. I'm going to go ahead and read some of the other chapters, maybe make a comment or two as we go through and kind of wind down on the program.
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay, so chapter 8, the Arabs unite to fight. Is it Psalm 83 or Ezekiel 38 or Armageddon? You know, there's an interesting conversation going on in that chapter with George and his dearest friend. His nickname is Raz, who's a well-known prophecy teacher, this Raz guy. So he thinks it's Ezekiel 38, but George is saying, well, what about Psalm 83? So they've got this interesting debate going on as these events are unfolding. And then it gets into the next chapter, Psalm 83, the final Arab-Israeli war that plays out in the novel. Then comes the Russian-Iranian nuclear connection, chapter 10. And terrorists attack America again in chapter 11. And Dave, that's a powerful scene where we've got American baseball parks coming under suitcase nuke attacks. And it's, you know, it puts the country on lockdown.
Yeah.
And so without going too much deeper into that, that is a gripping chapter. And then we get into chapter 12, the Arabs surrender. They surrender in defeat. Chapter 13, Israel becomes the next emerging market. Israel starts to now, after dealing with their Arab enemy threats, to become that greater, safer Israel, which is the next chapter. Greater Israel makes plans for a third temple. We get into discussions about how they come together to try to build a temple in Israel, the third temple, the tribulation temple. Chapter 15, Russia forms an evil plan to invade Israel. Now we're going to get into the Ezekiel 38, how that starts to set up on the world scene, where they come to invade Israel for plunder and booty. And then we get into Russia forms an evil plan to invade Israel. That's Gog forms an evil plan in Ezekiel 38, verse 10.
Right.
And then the Christian exodus into the clouds, chapter 16.
The rapture.
After the rapture, and that is the rapture, that is it starts to get very tear-jerking in this section of the book, chapter 16, 17, and 18. Chapter 17 is after the rapture. The world gets religious. You know, there's going to come a time after the rapture where the supernatural becomes the natural, the paranormal becomes the new normal, supernatural deception is no longer restrained. People won't be questioning if there is a God. They'll be now narrowing it down to who they're going to serve.
Oh, my gosh.
So, left behind, the heavenly love letter. That's chapter 18. That's when you got to eat your box of Kleenex out. Some of the family gets taken in the rapture, but some get left behind. And then the message to them left behind, chapter 19. Then we get into the rabbis start to warn of the Russian future invasion. They're talking to the prime minister at that time, warning him that this is a prophecy, Ezekiel 38, we need to prepare for it. And then the European Union, the revived Roman Empire, we get involved in that. They start to console Israel in chapter 21. Chapter 22 says the European Union condemns and the Vatican consecrates Russia. So the European Union is condemning Russia, but meanwhile the Vatican, who we put forward as the harlot world religion, is consecrating Russia, which is part of the Fatima secrets in 1917. One of them was they want the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Then we get in chapter 23, we start introducing the 144,000 witnesses. They show up on the scene after the rapture, and they're evangelizing and turning people to the Lord. Chapter 24, hooked in the jaws, Russia covets Israeli contracts with the West. What is that? You know, at that point in time, Israel's got, you know, a wealth of resources because Russia's coming to invade, plunder, and booty. They've got contracts going with the West. It says, Ezekiel 38:13, you've got the merchants of Tarshish. They're protesting the Russian invasion. That's a theme of commercialism. And then we get into when Ezekiel 38's going on, is that going to be a sterile event for the Jews? I mean, their God is going to stop it, but no, they're actually, I put in the scenario that the Jews are fleeing the area because this is a massive invasion coming. So it says Jews flee Israel, and the Russian invasion begins. Chapter 26, the Antichrist and the coming global religion. We start emphasizing who he is, coming out of the revived Roman Empire. The collapse of the Russian coalition. We talk That's a great chapter. It shows how God stops that with an earthquake, fire, hailstone, and brimstone. Meanwhile, these families are watching this stuff take place, and the whole world has now changed immensely. And we just got a few chapters left. We may as well finish with it.
Sure.
There's a letter to the saints that was left behind by a prophecy expert. We get into what he said to them, how he's preparing them for the persecution they're now going to face, the fifth seal saints and other saints, the tribulation saints. It's an incredible letter, very touching and sensitive letter that was left behind intentionally for them, knowing that they would be persecuted by the harlot and ultimately the Antichrist. And then it gets into the Queen of Heaven appears globally. We've got more Marian apparitions coming, sealing the deal for the Vatican as the harlot world religion. And then Israel starts to cleanse the Holy Land. It talks about they'll be burying the weapons after the Ezekiel invasion. They're burying the dead for 7 months. They'll be burning the weapons for 7 years. They gain world renown. It's a whole entirely different Israel on the world scene at that time. We get into talking about that and what the stage looks like, the setting for that. And then there's the Doomsday Conference as Christians meet to try to talk in a major conference about what's going on and identifying the harlot world religion that erupts into violence. We have a whole scene that we act out there. And then the Jews start to return home as rumors of nuclear war abound elsewhere. The Vatican Global Council meeting, there'll be another Vatican Council meeting. We put that forward in the book. Millions witness Eucharistic miracles at this council meeting from Rome. That's a very powerful chapter. We actually have the elements during the consecrated Mass turning into blood, and a miraculous vision comes forward. Very realistic. Then we get into the two witnesses as they prepare the Jews for the tribulation period and also witness about Jesus.
Right.
And then the last chapter, chapter 37, the encounter between Satan and his seed. Wow, that is a very powerful chapter, Dave, I'll tell you. When Satan meets his seed and convinces him that he's going to be the new world leader. Satan offered Jesus all the empires and kingdoms of the world, but Jesus rejected it. But this is not the case in this chapter. The same offer is made to the Antichrist, and he accepts it. So this book is, what I've done with this novel is I've merged the novels in the Revelation Road Book and the Apocalypse Road Book into one standalone novel they can read on its own. Because those books included commentary sections as well as novels.
Great
so some
books.
people just wanted to be able to read through the two just into one novel form.
That's awesome.
So we have a novel that combines the novels from Revelation Road, Hope Beyond the Horizon, and Apocalypse Road, Revelation for the Final Generation. And that novel is called The Apocalypse Revelations.
That's great, Bill. Bill, where can our listeners get a copy of this? And I know everyone is going to want to read this. You could just about read this in a weekend.
Yeah, it's about 300 pages of very captivating reading, and you can get it at Amazon.com under the Apocalypse Revelation. It's also on Kindle, or you can go to our website at prophecydepot.com, and we usually offer like a free DVD. If you come through the website, at this point we're offering a free DVD. You'll see it on the homepage. Buy the book and you get a free DVD. And the details of it are there. So that's at prophecydepot.com, Prophecy Depot like Home Depot.com.
Great. I know all of our listeners are going to want to get a copy of this. It's riveting, and it really gives us an insight of what's actually going to happen in those end times and what's happening on the world scene today. There are many of these things that are starting to happen as we speak.
That's right, and the Left Behind series was a best-selling series, and this book here takes you up to date with the new insights into the apocalypse. So highly encourage people to get this. If they were interested in Left Behind, they're certainly going to be interested in this book.
Well, there you have it, folks. This has been Bill Salus, best-selling author and speaker. His new book is The Apocalypse Revelations. You'll want to get that on Amazon. It's on Kindle, and you can get it at Bill's website at www.prophecydepot.com. That's prophecydepot.com. Bill, thanks again for being with us again. It's always great to see you and do these programs with you.
I love coming up to Big Bear Lake and being in the studio, Dave.
There we
go. It's great
go.
to be with you again.
That's awesome. God bless you, Bill.
Bye-bye.